Hey everybody, quick note before the video starts. We are going to be talking about things that might have a bit spoilers, but I'll be towards the end of the video. I'll be mostly general before that. And also, this video is very reactionary. It's coming up with just a reaction to what we've found going on the internet, talking about it here. I'm also in the middle of working on other heavily edited videos, so this video's editing is not the best. At the 12-minute mark, it's just going to turn into just a flat talk with just a simple graphic on the screen. But before that, there is some editing before that just make the video, the viewing experience a little bit better. But just keep that in mind. It's overall a discussion video. I am looking forward to your comments, so hope you enjoy the video. Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L, and this time I'm bringing in Kara.
Why are you bringing me into this?
Because I need someone to talk to.
Okay.
And you're gonna sit there and like it.
Okay.
I've got my better half Kara here, and now we can talk. So, you can see in the title, Hero Academia's author, Horikoshi, is getting apparently death threats. This video is going to be pretty much talking about what's happening, where is it coming from, are there actually death threats, what's the population of the death threats, what's actually going on the internet, and just also talking about the situation itself. Ideally, this will be an under 20 minute video. Ideally, this will be an under 20 minute video.
He says that, but we're going to record for like 40 and then he's going to cut it down. That's
how it always goes. But anyway, we're going to talk about it. So the situation as it stands right now. Okay, so why is this happening? Well, Endeavor. It's all centered around Endeavor. In the recent arc, the author is doing something with Endeavor that's trying to justify or give a bit more explanation to why he's done things in the past. And people are interpreting that as Horikoshi is redeeming a child abuser or a domestic abuser. That's how people are interpreting it, and it's springing off from there. Things have escalated to the point where apparently there have been death threats being thrown at Horikoshi through his various social media handles. Now, at the moment of this recording, we've only found this one image that the Redditors or people on Reddit compiled, which just showed a bunch of death threats. After looking at this, we went in and looked through Tumblr, we looked through Twitter, and right now there's more anti-death threats than there are death threats. Even on Twitter, I only went up to June, like the last days of June, where I was able to find maybe some angry comments, but even at that point, they hadn't become death threats. On Tumblr, we found just a lot of people angry in general about the idea of a redemption for Endeavor, given what he's done. And that anger at this point hasn't really escalated or spilled over into death threats. Like, you have like some nice little tags like, please Horikoshi, I'm begging you, in reference to don't do this with Endeavor. Whereas another person saying like, Horikoshi, literally, what the fuck, when talking about Endeavor. Other posts have been tagged with abuse, but generally it's people talking about it as opposed to people
death threatening about it.
Yeah, so this might be a situation where there's a few death threats out there, but right now the support for Horikoshi has greatly overtaken that. So if you start looking for it, you're probably only gonna find the Reddit post that had the initial death threats, and maybe if you're lucky, a few others depending on when they come up. And then we also have to wonder if the platforms themselves are censoring those death threats or like taking them down. That's always a possibility. But at this point, you're going to hear a lot more about people talking about the death threats, which is, I guess, something worthwhile, I guess. I mean, I guess it's better that...
It's always good that when people aren't actually being threatened, you know?
Yeah, but it's at this point, I kind of want to see the rationales that people are saying. At this point, too, I have like the people on Discord checking things out. I just want to give them the quick shout-outs. I want to say thank you to Skelly, Sen Papi Leo, May, pretty sure that's Schnorf, Peachy, and Stevie, just because they're helping out right now with seeing if we can find any of these. Anyway, back to this. On my channel, I also did a poll, a very quick poll, asking people what they felt about it. I'm gonna have it on the screen, and we had like some nice little answers. The general question was, how do you feel about an Endeavor redemption? We had comments saying I'm into it, 3% saying I'm against it, 39% saying don't care as long as it's well written, And the last percentage saying like you can make him complex without redeeming him. Although there is something that's really important to point out with the don't care as long as it's well written and the you can make him complex without redeeming him. People aren't moving on him being redeemed fully, but they think it's fine for Endeavor to have this extra layer to his character being created. Like there's nothing mutually exclusive about having a character who's shitty at his home life but is trying to do better and is also really competent at his job. Like there's nothing it's not like you can't have those three things in one person, right?
Yeah, well, I remember back in the day when Bakugo was kidnapped, everyone was saying like, oh yeah, he's definitely going to be a villain, he's definitely going to be a villain, when, you know, he is...
When he has more to his character. Well, like, he has, like, parts of his personality he's not going to move on. Anyway, what I do want to say is that people are right. Like, you don't have to accept him being redeemed. Like, heck, I don't think he's going to be redeemed. I think Endeavor still stands to probably... I think it's fine if he were to go to court. I think it's fine if people were to find out about this and he was to suffer the consequences of his previous past, right? I think that's totally fair. Some people were in the comments for this poll saying that you can't redeem like what he's done in his past. You can add more to his character. You can have him on a path to fixing things, but, you know, it doesn't erase the things that he did in the past.
Yeah.
And then there were also people who pointed out like their perspective of they've been in an abusive family before. And I think that's also greatly appreciated because that does tell us how some people who are anti-Endeavor might feel.
Yeah.
I think that's totally reasonable. I think those people are appreciated. And for the people that were confident enough to share their story on the comments, thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to go into our own personal thoughts based on everything we have read. But before that, I just want to tell you guys some stuff to keep in mind about Horikoshi as an author and just in general about Shonen Jump and the way they do things and the way the authors do things. Because redemptions for terrible people is not unheard of in Shonen Jump. Orochimaru, Toby, Vegeta, like it's not unheard of. So before we get into that area, let's just very quickly talk about some things that Horikoshi's already done in his manga when it comes to redemption. First, one of the big topics was child abuse within Tumblr. And I think they hit on like something really important. And I did some little research about it too. One thing you have to keep in mind is that Horikoshi is effectively really good at manipulating the emotions or the perceptions of the majority of the audience. And the way he does this is with very simple lines stating whether or not a character feels bad about a situation. What I'm trying to say with this one is that there is another abuser, technically, in Hero Academia that people are not as angry as about unless you're on Tumblr. Because on Tumblr, they're very emotionally aware of a lot of things. And the person we're talking about is Bakugo's mother. Okay, so like in the episode with Bakugo's mom, just bear with me for a second. You had this shot of her hitting him on the head, right? And this isn't going to bother the majority of the people because at this point, we've kind of accepted this. This happens in anime all the time. People get headshots all the time. But here's the thing. In our world, in our real world context, this is a no-go. This is bad. Hitting kids on the head is really, really bad. It can open the door to a lot of potential brain injury. Like, there's all kinds of studies. We live in a world where we're having the concussion epidemic with people in American football. We have the issue of punch drunkenness that you don't see in anime unless you're in a sports manga. And then you have this, a kid getting hit on the head. Most likely this is their like everyday life. Like, think about what happened here. He got hit on the head right in front of his teachers. No one bats an eye, right? Because it's played for comedy. But hitting a kid on the head is statistically worse than punching a kid in the stomach. How do you feel about that idea?
Bad.
Bad. Now, mind you, people will not care about this as much because the author doesn't portray it to be something to be cared about as much. Heck, you go along this line and you talk about just how people treat kids in general in Hero Academia, along with other shonen manga. Like, think about it. The sports festival, you're watching kids beat each other up. You're watching some kids who can clad themselves in steel and harden their bones punch each other in the face. And you're telling me punch drunkenness cannot be a serious threat here? People are monetizing kids getting beat up. Compared by our real world standards, shonen manga and anime is not a great place to be in when you're a kid. Because if it was our real world standards, people are going to be ending up with a bad life past their 30s.
Well, I imagine people would be more angry about it too.
Oh yeah, yeah. If people brought in real world context, it'd be a bigger deal. But people generally don't, because the mangas never really touch about that unless they're a boxing manga. That's the only place that you're gonna find out about the repercussions of getting punched in the face too much.
I've only seen it in Ashita no Joe.
Oh no, it's in Ashita no Joe. It's in Hajime Ippo. You know, that really popular one. So that's the only place you're gonna find out about punch drunkenness when it comes to headshots. All right, so like when you're looking at like the morals, you have to be really careful with the fiction versus reality thing, and that does kind of like play into how easy it is for the authors in these manga to redeem characters, because in the manga you can have these ideal situations where redemption can happen a little bit easier. Like in Dragon Ball, people die all the time and can be revived. You can argue that debts are repaid when a person dies.
Vegeta did nothing wrong.
yeah, see? And like then there's also the next thing. Like Horikoshi wants to have fun with his characters. That's an author first mentality versus reality. That's story first, reality second. And the one that we see this happen with, I think, is Stain. Stain is a person that Horikoshi called a dark hero. The moment that he called Stain a dark hero, what happened to everything that Stain did before? No, he's justifying it. He's like elevating Stain to a higher level. Why not just call Stain a villain? No, he's calling him a dark hero. Stain, the person who went and disabled a man that we know was a really good man from the spin-off manga. Stain disabled him for the purpose of spreading propaganda.
Well, he also killed a bunch
of people.
Yeah.
Don't even get into like talking about the other people. He killed 3 other heroes and maimed 8 others, I think. Those were his statistics. And then he had no problem with trying to kill kids, right? Stain is, by all counts, a terrible person. The people he went after were ultimately, as far as we know, people who he just said weren't good enough. They were people ultimately doing a net good in society, but he found that they weren't good enough. That was their sin, right? And Horikoshi went in and simply said, this is a dark hero. Look, man, if this happened in our real world where a man went and attacked cops exclusively and was taking down cops, killing them because they weren't good enough cops, that man is not getting out of jail. That's not someone you're going to be sympathetic about. If someone took out your brother, the brother you know is the most honorable person in your life, for the simple sin of him being a cop who wasn't good enough, that guy's not getting out of jail.
I don't think cops are a very good example.
It's corruption.
Yeah.
I know, but firefighters?
Yeah, well, people like
Firefighters. Okay, we'll use firefighters, right? If there was a firefighter killer. But you get the idea. Like, the point is, even with Ida's brother, you should not put the title Dark Hero on that person if you're talking real world standards. What do you think? Agreed? Yeah. Like, well, don't let me steamroll you.
No. I'm just waiting for you to move on.
Oh, sorry. It's because I have to establish this. Point of the thing is, Horikoshi likes redeeming his characters because he wants to do cool things with his characters. Like, ultimately with Endeavor, you're going to see a lot of cool scenes when you're having his thing coming up, right? Now, with the whole Endeavor thing, I think it's totally fine that the author is going to be going in to say that, hey, there's a little bit more going on under the hood of this person. I think that's fine.
Well, plus, like, who knows where he's going with this? The arc isn't done, right? I'm not caught up, but...
Oh, yeah, like, there's always the possibility that Endeavor just goes up and dies in the next 2 chapters.
Well, either that or Horikoshi could be doing one thing, but, like, with the reveal of the character at the end, he could, like, totally reverse that.
Yeah. I mean, like, the story isn't done yet. So, like, people do have a trigger-happy mentality. They go firing first.
Darling in the Franxx with Ichigo, that was something.
Yeah, people fired first, even though like we could all tell that everything was going to be fine the next week. 7 Deadly Sins had like something happen in the manga, not really abuse, but just people jumping to conclusions. It happens. All things considered, though, back to Endeavor, like I agree with people that say his abuse shouldn't be excused. But at the same time, I think it's okay for the author to want to add a little bit more dimension to his character.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Or add a little bit more, like, subtext to his character. I think it's fine. Now, mind you, there are, like, other parts that when you start applying real-world logic to it, get kind of sketchy. And, you know, the idealism of a story can pretty much steamroll those real world implications. And what I'm talking about is the way that the mother behaves in all of this. One of the panels in the recent chapters, and apologies for the spoilers, but one of the panels of the recent chapters have the mother talking to two of her kids, and she's saying that, your father, he has things he doesn't want to let go of. And this is where like the redemption started, because she says, your father still comes every day to leave me flowers. And that's used as something to point out a virtue in Endeavor. And this is one of the things that got people upset, because the mother seems to be making excuses for Endeavor. The problem with this one, like, while the feel-good feeling of, like, they're on the way to reconciliation feels nice, when it comes to abusive relationships, you have situations where the abused person starts to believe what the abuser is telling them, or their mentality starts warping a little bit towards the abused person, such that they are more apologetic and forgiving of abusive behavior because they bought into the Kool-Aid. They bought into what the abuser was selling. Like if the abuser told them, like, you're only good when you're with me, or I'm only hitting you because I care about you. When they start buying into that, it gets kind of messy, because now you can't really say whether or not that person is in the right mind. And, unfortunately, I'll bring in anecdotal evidence in for this. This is how one of my friends who was abused thought about things. And it took a lot. But finally, she was able to get away from the guy, and she can reflect now on what her behavior was like in those earlier days. Point is, human mentality is really susceptible to suggestion. And these kind of situations aren't black and white. And so when you have this kind of thing happening with the mother, where the story's idealization will kind of flatten it out and steamroll it into this is a good thing, you end up with a situation where people who might be aware of the nuances to these kind of relationships will get a bit frustrated. But I think that's overall, I think it's fine for people to get angry about it.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like, I think it's fine to have discussion about this. I think it's fine to point out that this isn't correct.
Yeah. And, like, all the time in real life and, like, in fiction, people can do awful things, but they can try and rise above it. Not that it's ever forgiven, but, at least they're trying.
Yeah, I think it's nice that you have an opportunity for Endeavor to try and get his life back together. I think, like, there's situations where forgiveness can be good. If all the injured parties are in the right mind to give that forgiveness. I think that's fine. I think it's fine to have a character strive to try and earn forgiveness. I think that's totally reasonable. In the same light, I also think it's very reasonable to have Endeavor go to court or stand trial.
Oh, yeah.
Just because that's the most fair thing. I don't think it's fair for Endeavor to die, however. I don't think it's fair to just kill him off just for the sin of the abuse.
Well, that's, like, I think there's more to, like, trying to, like, make up for what you did, other than, like, oh, you're dead now, that's it, you can't do anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, overall, the one thing I will, like, stand against, though, is the sending of death threats, just because you don't like something that's happening in a story.
Yeah, like...
That's always going to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's nothing constructive coming out of that.
No.
Like, even with the angry people, I think it's totally okay for you to be angry about things, because that's opening a discussion, although I would say, remind yourself, it's a story. Things are idealized in a story. Authors are still able to be wrong, just because authors aren't all-powerful in our world. I think it's fine to call them out on it when you think it's there. I think it's fine to build arguments based on it. But to go so far that you're suffering over it, I think that's always going to be like where you cut it. And to like try and inflict that suffering on others through death threats, I think that's also where you should cut it.
I agree.
Do you? I know you send death threats to your Love Live idols when they're not doing things right.
What? No.
I bet you do.
No.
You totally do.
No. Stop defaming me on the internet.
Anyway.
It's not true.
Do you have any last things you want to say? Because you were just listening to me a lot.
Well, I can see why people would be worried about it, just because, like, an author can easily say, look, the characters are fixed now, and because it's fiction, they will be fixed. And, if people take that lesson into their real lives, that's where the issues start, because people aren't, like, when they go on one path, they don't always stick to it, you know?
Yeah.
So I can understand the concern, but again, like,
but
death threats is where you should...
Yeah, although on the other note to that too, that only becomes a problem because people can't differentiate fiction from reality.
Yeah, which in itself is a problem.
Yeah, I think that's a bigger problem we should probably solve. But I think as a good first step, it's always good to point out this is not your world. This is not your reality. Don't try to live by those standards. And like when it comes to this situation, I really do think it comes back to Horikoshi doesn't think about societal problems first. Like he'll think about, oh yeah, it's not, child abusers aren't good. I'm sure he agrees with that, but he's not gonna warp his whole message about the intricacies of that problem.
No,
he's gonna be more like, I want Endeavor to be cool though, so I'm gonna like put this extra little bit hint so people can like understand a little bit more, and then just show cool scenes with him. I think it's fine for a character to get cool scenes. For people who think like just because you're evil you can't get cool scenes, like, and you know, like Endeavor also, the tragedy of the character is that he inflicted suffering, because he was blinded by his pursuit of, I guess, beating All Might. That's a tragedy of the character.
Yeah, and he doesn't even get that because he won by default. Like, that's not fun for him.
Like, the tragedy, like, extends to his family. It, like, spilled over to them. But overall, it's a very interesting situation. Mm-hmm. Anyway, guys, we're at 22 minutes, not 40 minutes. So maybe we'll cut this down. But otherwise, thanks for watching.
Yeah, bye.